This is such an interesting place.
Native Americans would have, and European settlers.
On this adventure, we will explore historical locations in Southeast America during colonial time. The first stop is Parris Island Museum inside a military base, a nearby archaeological location of French settlement Charlesfort, and later Spanish colonial headquarters Santa Elena. Make sure to bring your driver license and vehicle registration to enter this Marine Corps base. The admission to the museum is free. If you're interested in military history, you will enjoy the exhibits from American Revolution, Civil War, American-Spanish War, all the way up to recent history. Such an interesting museum. What makes this museum so interesting is a French-Spanish section exhibiting artifacts from the 16th century. Some of the ceramics were made in Seville, Spain. Native pottery found among Spanish and French era trash. So here stood Charlesfort. Charlesfort founder Jean Riboud was a major figure in the French attempts to colonize Florida. Such an interesting place, Santa Elena and Charlesfort. Beautiful, beautiful island. So much history here. Pedro Menendez de Aviles. Jean Riboud and his French soldiers left the fort in 1563, and the new governor of Spanish Florida, Pedro Menendez, moved in with his army and built a new fort, Santa Elena. It was the first Spanish colonial capital for the next 20 years, but Spaniards had to retreat to Saint Augustine in 1587. Make sure you leave the base before the sunset. I was cutting it close here. The next morning I continued the journey south to Fort Frederica on St. Simon Island in Georgia. So how far is Fort from here?
What's left of it is a quarter of a mile down there. I can show you this thing here.
Okay.
So there's still part of the magazine left.
Mm-hmm.
And there's still part of the barracks left.
Okay.
Those white, those little white things are, that's where we are.
Yep.
And those white things are all foundations that we've excavated.
Okay, cool.
You'll see over here, there's an excavation going on.
Okay.
Right behind this board, you'll see a display with a bunch of artifacts in it.
Cool.
That actually came out of the dig site active up there.
I'm in Fort Frederica in southeastern Georgia. This was a major fort established by British in early 18th century. And this site was a major battleground because this territory was disputed between Spain and British Empire. James Hofthorpe, the first governor of Georgia, wanted to create a buffer zone between Spanish Empire in the south, which is basically Florida, and British Empire that held the territory north of Charleston in South Carolina. James Hofthorpe wanted to create an idealistic community. He allowed all the Protestant denominations to freely practice their religion here. And he abolished slavery. He allowed the British prisoners, poor prisoners who weren't able to pay their debts, to come here and to give them a fresh start. So he was a philanthropist kind of a guy. So everything that required for ships was stored here, from tools, food, weapons, and other provisions.
When James Hofthorpe founded this community, he wanted the town to support and provide many trades for self-sufficiency. So there was a blacksmith shop, tavern, doctor, surgeon, candle maker, pharmacy, storehouse, and a bakery.
Public bakery, of course, they had to have that. Fresh baked bread was a great comfort to the people. Francis Moore, 1736, voyage to Georgia. 2 years after the arrival, Mr. Bennett either died or deserted the colony, and the task of running the tavern was left to his wife and his servant Samuel Lee, whom man eventually married, and also kept a store here, and she was a very good merchant apparently. An iron winged. Interesting. I didn't know they had winged nuts back then. So Thomas Hurd, who lived on this lot, was the most adaptable and successful settler. He was a dyer of cloth, but worked a variety of jobs: farming, brewing beer, and nursing silkworms. Foundation of Francis Moore. It was a small brick house. He served as General Hofthorpe, secretary, town recorder, and keeper of supplies. And after he returned to England in 1743, he published an eyewitness account of foundings of Frederica entitled A Voyage to Georgia. This was his house. I assume that was the fireplace. Apparently James Hofthorpe wasn't impressed with Francis Moore and his services and caused him some trouble. Another interesting fact is that John and Charles Wesley preached on this island in this fort. They are founders of Methodist Church. So Dr. Frederick Hoserdorf, a surgeon, purchased this lot in 1743. It was a two-story tabby house. So tabby is a special kind of concrete. It's a mixture of lime, sand, water, and seashells. It was readily available, cheap building material versus bricks, which were not available. So Georgia coast and land was disputed between Spanish and British Empire, and in 1742 Spain sent 2,000 soldiers to capture this place. But James Hofthorpe led a defense, and they ambushed Spanish before the town in marshes and routed the troops away from this fort and saved the day basically for British. Spain never even tried to capture this place after that,
And since there was no need for British soldiers, they left in 1749. So James Hawthorne returned to Britain in 1743, and the British troops were disbanded. Unfortunately, that eliminated the income for local population, and town began to fade slowly afterwards, until it was completely destroyed by fire in 1758. So during 1742, the military campaign by Spanish, the barracks served as a hospital and as a quarters for Spanish prisoners of war. Are you making a canoe?
We are.
All right.
Trying to. Native Americans would have, and European settlers, but normally they would have used a sawhorse. Not a sawhorse, a pit saw, and they would have sawed the log in half and start from there. But we don't have one of those. But the tree fell on the property, so we're trying to utilize it for an educational purpose.
Yes. Nice.
Slowly we're making our trench down the middle and digging it out.
It's going to take a while, looks like.
It sure will, yes. Acclimated to deterring water. It's kind of its natural state.
So cypress is ideal, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Tending a kitchen garden was one of the main tasks of women in Frederica. Cooking, making medical remedies from herbs, preserving food, basically occupied much of the day. Oh, they had green onion, radish, basil, cabbage, turnips, spinach, zucchini. 25-year-old German who visited the settlement in 1736, and he made a drawing of this hut. His name was Philip Georg Frederick. So soldiers lived in these huts. In return for their willingness to lay down their lives in the wilderness, their housing was rough, their pay was meager, and they had to grow their own food. Pretty rough accommodation, I would say, and uncomfortable. And apparently James and Charles Wesley preached here.
I hope you enjoyed the beginning of this amazing journey. There's so much for us to learn. Please join me in the next video.
The Timucuans who lived here for about, give or take 10,000 years, then goes into the French.